I just finished watching Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, and I loved this, and I'm very sad to see that there is no second season planned right now, because I was looking forward to watching the rest of this. Regardless, we're going to be talking about Season 1 of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which is a crazy title to keep repeating, and this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about everything that happened, giving my thoughts on each episode, breaking down everything that happened. We're going to get into that in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to say hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's get right into it with the season premiere. So we are just introduced to the Kabani right out of the gate. I'm gonna keep mixing up Kabaneri and Kabani. I apologize for that. So it's just your typical zombie created by some viral infection. These zombies are terrorizing people. And you know what? They did a really good job on making them seem like really, really vicious because of how gruesome their attacks were. I know like a lot of zombie movies and TV shows come under criticism for being just pretty generic, and I'm not gonna lie to you, this was a little bit generic because at the end of the day, you still had the missions of, oh my god, let's get through here, but there's zombies there. Zombies are attacking. Let's get on the train. Let's get out of there. But they made it work. I still enjoyed it. I don't need this ridiculously in-depth story to enjoy it. I really like what was presented here. So the one thing that was very different so far from the Kabani is something that we were introduced to is if you get bitten by a Kabani, obviously just like any zombie movie, you will turn into a Kabani. So they have these suicide bags, and the season premiere, like right off the gate, they made it seem like a pretty big thing where if you're bitten, you just kill yourself, and people will put their guns to your head like, use a suicide bag, use it because we don't want you to turn into Kabani. So they give them kind of the dignity of killing themselves. So it's just a little bag. It's like a grenade. You pull it, and then your heart explodes, which is really, really crazy to think about. That would be horrible. But at the end of the day, I kind of like that solution, to be honest with you, instead of just turning into a Kabani or having to like slice your throat or something like that. If you're going to go on your own terms, why not something that just blows you up right away? No pain. Well, I don't know how, I doubt you'd feel pain because it's like very, very instant, to be honest with you. So that's pretty much what happens right out of the gate. We are shown the Kabane, we are shown about the suicide bags, and then we are brought to Ikuma, the main character, who is a steamsmith, and he was working on a powerful gun to pierce the heart cage of a Kabane because they're very hard to kill, apparently, and you need some special bullets, which he ended up inventing properly to actually kill this Kabane. At the beginning, I was not frustrated, but I didn't like Ikuma. I didn't. I don't know what it was about him. I don't know if he was too nerdy. I didn't know if it was the green hair. I don't know. He wanted to be this typical hero, but once he turned into a Kabaneri, I ended up like really liking him as a main character. He's your typical guy where he's like, he starts off weak and he's like, I have a sense for justice. And then as it went on, his sense for justice just carried him throughout the story, carried him throughout fights. And I just ended up liking him over time, right? So we're brought to a scene where he's stealing body parts. He is pretty much just experimenting. He's researching. He needs Kabane parts to figure out how his gun works. We're then brought into kind of just, this whole premiere is kind of about the world building because you can see that during this train that they're on, that's the biggest part about it, Kabaneri on the Iron Fortress, they travel on trains and have all these different stops and stations, and you have to get naked, and people inspect you for bites everywhere. And even if, like, there was brought to a situation where the people are accusing someone of being a Kabane, but he's like, oh no, I'm not a Kabane, and they end up killing him anyways, and then Ikuma has his big moment of like, what's wrong with you? How could you possibly do that? And I'm not saying he was wrong in that sense, I'm just saying that it's kind of setting up Ikuma's character right now. And I gotta say, man, what I did like about this too is this is exactly how humans would behave if this were to happen. If the Kabaneri were real, if there was a zombie infection everywhere, people would lose their humanity and like just kill people if they even were suspicious. They won't even give the people the dignity of reasoning, leaving them for 3 days because that's what they're supposed to do. Leave them in a cage for 3 days to see if they turn into a Kabane, which is extremely fair. But they don't do that. They just look at him and go, he could be a Kabane. He might turn into a Kabane. Boom. They don't think about it. They would kill people. It's really sad to think that's exactly how humans would behave. And that's another thing that I really liked is while the Kabaneri is completely fiction, right? The way that people behaved in this story is exactly how the human race would treat people who wouldn't get on the train. You know, like, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. There is a reality element to it, which I really, really enjoyed. So anyways, getting back to the story though, Ikuma ends up getting detained for having a little bit of a freak out. He gets put in a cage, and this is where we're introduced to Mume, who is the main female protagonist, along with Ikuma, excuse me, and it's a really, really brief introduction. She's just interested by him and his fascination by Kabane, but there wasn't really like a love interest there. It's a little bit confusing. I'm not sure how old she's supposed to be. I'm not sure how old Ikuma's supposed to be, but I think we're having this problem with anime, and I really, really hate this about anime shows where it's a little bit unclear what the bridge is between a girl and her age here. It's like the whole high school thing. I hate it because they're making it out these characters to seem like really pretty, really sexualized, and I can still tell that this character is kind of young, and I'm like, it just makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but thankfully, they didn't do anything about it. They didn't have any, things popping out of her chest. They didn't have anything that was over-exemplified. They went out of their way to make Mume look really pretty, and I didn't really like that too much myself because I am worried that she is a little bit on the underage side. They did the same thing with, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I have some notes here, which we're going to get into. The leader, the chief's daughter, whatever her name was. She's clearly older, so that's okay when they like go out of their way to make her seem pretty. And they actually, like, the art style for this was nuts. It was beautiful. Every little detail that they put into us. When they really cared about making a character look good, man, did they do a good job. So, getting back into the end of the first episode, the Kabane ends up attacking wherever they are, and Ikuma ends up luring one of the Kabane into his old home. And we're also given flashbacks that his family was killed, and that's another thing that's pretty typical for the story, right? He ends up finishing his steam gun, whatever he was calling it. He ended up using the gun that he was working on for so long because of these special bullets. He ends up killing the Kabane. The first time he killed the Kabane, he did it, but he realized he has been bitten. But, like the infection, he ends up tying a string around his neck, yanking on it, and it stops the infection from reaching his brain because apparently, I don't know if he figured this out or, regardless, there was something mentioned throughout the series, I don't remember when, but if the infection doesn't reach your brain, you're okay. So he was choking himself, strangling himself, and realized he turned into a Kabane, but he didn't know he was a Kabane just yet. He just ended up saving his humanity. After Ikuma figures out that he ended up actually stopping the virus from spreading and he's okay, he's not a Kabane, he ended up telling his fellow steamsmith that he was okay, he got bit, everything's okay, and he ended up to kill a Kabane with his new bolt gun, his charged bolt thing, whatever it was called, right? So, which was an insane revelation, right? Like, this is a big thing for the show because everybody is scared of the Kabane, right? Anyways, they end up getting ambushed as a zombie movie, just like the Kabane, just like your typical zombie movie. The Kabane end up getting ambushed, and then Mume ends up coming in and letting everybody board the train to escape while she takes care of, like, all of the Kabane by herself. And this is where I was sitting here, and I'm like, come on, man, come on. Because I actually didn't know that Kabaneri was a thing. I just found this on the front page of Crunchyroll, and that's why I started watching it. I didn't hear about it from anywhere. I thought this was just regular people, and that's why Ikuma ended up needing his new gun, because that would be the special thing. I didn't think this is a world of superpowers. So I was actually a little bit frustrated this episode because you had this little girl beating up a bunch of zombies by herself, and I was like, come on, dude, that's a little bit ridiculous, don't you think? So anyways, Ikuma ends up trying to board the train after Mume, or while Mume is defending against the Kabane, and he ends up getting thrown off because during a little bit of a scruffle, he ended up getting revealed as a Kabane. There was, his body was weird, everything was looking strange, and they were like, absolutely not. They ended up booting him off the train, but he keeps trying to talk to people and talking about like, hey, I'm okay, but this is where I kind of understand the human side, because he's clearly not okay. He is a zombie. How are they supposed to know to believe him? Because it's been shown that different Kabane are kind of different. Some of them can use swords, some of them are intelligent. I don't believe any of them spoke, but at the end of the day, like, that I understand the humans about. So he's forced off. They need to let down a drawbridge. Ikuma ends up doing it himself, and he's so full of, like, anger because it's like, people are disgusting. People don't care about anything anymore, so he ends up lecturing people while lowering the drawbridge and ends up trying to get back onto the train, and this is where Mume comes in and defends him because she has revealed that she is also a Kabane and explains that they have all the powers of the Kabane. They are zombie-like, but they still have their humanity. The virus didn't reach their brain, and it's kind of like being kept up by something they keep around their neck, which is, again, very interesting. So they come out to this, and they come out to a little bit of an agreement. They have to sleep at the back of the train. Nobody trusts them, but at the end of the day, they did let them board because Ikuma and Mume both saved the day from the Kabane. We are then brought into the next episode, which is kind of just explaining what the Kabaneri are. Mume started telling Ikuma about his new powers. She starts teaching him how to fight. We have that classic like training thing where he's getting beat up over and over and over again while they're all chilling in the last car, right? And this is where Ikuma ends up all of a sudden just becoming an okay fighter. He ends up being able to handle himself after this, but at the end of the day, he still did feel just... He's still a superhuman, right? So I guess you can give it a little bit of an excuse there, but they end up having to stop. There's nothing really to break down there, but we are brought back into Ikuma and him wanting to avenge his sister's death because he was a coward. He ran away. He vowed to never do that again. He vows to protect humanity. He vows to protect everybody. He also wants to turn Mume human again. So the other part that was revealed to us is that Mume and Ikuma now need to survive by drinking blood, and that's why Mume ends up getting tired. At the end of the episode, Ikuma ends up trying to attack... Amy? Is that what it is? Is that how you say that? I don't remember her name. It's not mentioned too much. I have it written down over here. Anyways, so how they figure out... Because throughout the train, people still don't trust the Kabaneri. Understandably so again, but what Amy does... Amy, whatever the top lady, I'll call her that. The top lady does is she just out of nowhere takes a knife, just jabs it right in Ikuma to prove that he won't just mindlessly attack her. He stays true to his vow. I will not hurt you. I'm here to help everybody. He doesn't do a thing. So that kind of leads people to trust Ikuma a little bit more. But at the end of the episode, which sucks, is Ikuma ended up attacking that top lady because he didn't know that he needs blood to survive, and he's starting to turn into a Kabaneri. He's doing anything to get blood. The episode kind of ends at that point with him attacking her, getting on top, and she's like, oh my god, what are you doing? So again, a little bit more like your typical zombie story, but I think I'm still very, very interested in it. I still am having a blast with the show, to be honest with you. I like it. After that, and there's a couple times throughout this series where it's a little bit hard to break down, because after that we're just brought to another big fight scene with the Kabane, and we have the samurai guy introduced and showing what he can do. He has some special sword. It all looks good. The Kabane board the train. They have this mission. Everybody defends everything. Mume does great. Ikuma does great. And by the end of the episode, everybody fully officially has their trust in Ikuma and Mume, because it is revealed again that they need blood to survive, and they needed blood. So what the top lady did was offer her own blood for them to drink. They drank, powers ready to go. They ended up taking out the rest of the Kabane, and while some people still didn't want the Kabane there, or the Kabaneri, excuse me, the rest of the people on the train all offered their own blood for them to drink. They wanted them to stay, and everybody's okay. Everybody is allowed to love each other. The Kabaneri has free roam of the train. Everybody's okay. That's how that episode kind of ended. It was nothing really too tough to break down there, but as the series continues on, of course, there's more to talk about. But now we move into, in my opinion, what was the coolest arc of the entire show so far. So what they end up needing to do is they end up needing to pass through some area which is just completely full of Kabane. There's mention of this black fog thing that we don't really know about, and there is one thing in between this that is very important to note, is Mume ends up meeting somebody who is really loyal to her big brother, who we will meet down the line, and she's told to complete her mission. And this is where I was really confused, because I had no clue what that mission could be. Maybe to watch, maybe Mume was actually a high-level Kabane where she can keep her sentience and still wants to suck everybody's blood or something like that. I really didn't know what to think about this at all. But anyways, they needed to come down. They needed to move a crane. They needed to get some stuff out of the way. They come to this really cool-looking just area, and it's filled with Kabane. You have that typical zombie scene again where you just find out that after one Kabane is there, you see more Kabane, and then all of a sudden you look down and there's this giant pit of endless Kabane. And the black fog that people were speaking about was just millions of Kabane, probably hundreds of thousands, millions, I would guess millions. So Mume ends up, and this is where they have Ikuma and Mume have their first kind of battle with each other, is because Mume just wants to go in and just destroy all the Kabane, because she's kind of held up on this idea of like, I need to prove it to Big Brother. Big Brother says I'm not strong enough, stuff like that, right? So she's kind of pushing herself, and it's kind of really confusing why she's there. I don't know what Big Brother really wants yet, but she's doing this. She is pushing herself too far. She ends up fainting. Ikuma wants to go help her, of course, because Ikuma is the biggest savior. He wants to make her human again. They end up having this insanely cool fight scene, missions running from the zombies, and I thought, like, the artwork, the piece, the way the black fog was, I thought it was all really really beautiful, to be honest with you. Mume does her job, and Ikuma's mad at her, but he isn't. Sorry, I just had to take a pause because I have my newborn next to me, and she's making some noises, but she's sleeping. She's so cute right now. But anyways, everything looks like it's going to get done. They end up moving the crane. They end up getting the train going, but Mume ends up still fainting and falling down this entire giant pit, and Ikuma wants to go after her. And it's also revealed that the black fog, too, isn't just a bunch of shadows of Kabane. They can turn into this giant fusion of a million Kabane. It's just like this giant creature, which is, again, super cool. As it moves, the Kabane is kind of like falling off of his arms. I thought it was super well done, to be honest with you. So Mume ends up getting trapped under a bunch of rubble, and Ikuma wants to go down and free her. He wants to stay with her, and she's like, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Again, this typical thing that you see from all these types of stories, right? I don't deserve it. I'm not strong. You should leave me here to die. And Ikuma, being the hero he is, refuses to leave her, fights off the Kabane by itself. After a little bit of time with that, they end up escaping. And you know what I would have liked to see? I would have liked to see a little bit more of just Ikuma and Mume together going and like traversing through these caves, through the rubble. I thought it would be really cool them trying to hide from Kabane because they were under, like, I don't know how far down they were. They were just trapped completely. I thought it would have been cool to expand on that personally, but they end up getting out. They end up getting back on the train. They need to take out the black fog. They have this giant cannon, which ended up working. They end up shooting, and Mume ends up getting inside the black fog. And this is where we're revealed that it's another kind of rogue Kabaneri controlling the black fog. The black fog isn't just a bunch of Kabane coming in together and attacking people. Somebody is controlling it, which we are later found out that it's another Kabaneri controlled by somebody else who has the virus still going crazy to their brain, and it has to be a female for some reason. So Mume ends up killing her. It's a big revelation. So it seems like, and this is where I was kind of sitting back and thinking like, okay, is this what Mume's trying to do? Maybe Mume's playing like a good guy because, I don't know, maybe the people on the train are the best people to actually defeat the Kabaneri. I don't know. I was kind of getting the idea that the Kabaneri, there were definitely more Kabaneri, but I was getting the idea that the Kabaneri were bad guys, and Mume, I don't know why she killed this person, but I thought Mume was trying to, at the end of the day, trying to kind of get to that level herself where she's going on a rampage and killing people. Maybe she's just getting intel for something. I didn't know what, but again, Mume and Ikuma ended up saving the day. There's just this new thing where it's like, okay, there's definitely more Kabaneri out there. And for the next episode, there isn't really too much to talk about because it's pretty much Mume and Ikuma talking about their past, Ikuma talking about why he's doing what he does. He ends up promising Mume that he'll make her become human again. Mume ends up revealing her real name, which I kind of forget what it was, to be honest with you. And at the end of the episode, we finally see Biba, who is Mume's big brother, and we see Mume through some bad dreams or something end up expressing something about her big brother, and Ikuma doesn't like the idea, and he was questioning throughout like the series, who is this big brother? And that's what I was kind of wondering too, to be honest with you. So we're introduced to him. He's this big Kabane killer. Him and his team are undefeated. They do great. Ikuma ends up meeting Biba and is very, very suspicious of him. He kind of just is like, who are you and what are your motives? And we don't really know what he's thinking at the sense, which, to be honest with you, I was a little bit suspicious as well, just mostly because we now know that, one, more Kabaneri are out there, and two, Mume is kind of just really trying to prove to be her big brother. And I think at this point it was suggested that the reason she's a Kabaneri is because of her big brother, but I don't remember that. Maybe I'm remembering everything in kind of a wrong order here, so apologies if that's not the case. And Ikosuma's feelings are just more so like just driven home because of the next episode, and that's pretty much where Biba ends up, after defeating a bunch of Kabane, they end up traveling together. Everybody wants the team there. Everybody likes Biba. Biba takes care of people. Their team is undefeated, right? So Ikuma ends up being suspicious of Biba and wants to talk to Mume and wants to get into the front of the train where Biba is, but he is revealed to have been keeping Kabane there, which it seems like is for research purposes or to turn people into Kabane, which again it's a really cool thought that somebody is keeping them and perhaps creating the Kabane, and that's why Mume might have been a Kabane. Mume ends up getting a couple messages, or a couple, I apologize guys, I don't know if you heard my baby sneezing in her sleep, sorry. She ends up getting a couple missions to get a master key, but she ends up failing, and then Biba's a little bit disappointed in her. She's tricked, given the wrong key. It seems like Biba's a little bit disappointed in her. It seems like Biba's like talking to Mume like, oh my god, you lost a step, but After that, after Ikoma tries to figure out the reason why Kabane are being kept on the train, and he's totally convinced that Biba's a complete bad guy and doesn't understand Mume's actions. He's just really, really confused and know that Big Brother is kind of the reason for doing so. And it really does seem like, I was kind of sitting here and thinking too, like, okay, what if Biba is keeping the Kabane to find a cure for it? You never know. Maybe it could be like some big twist like that, but I should have known it wasn't the case because of how the series has been going. It's been very generic. And I don't mean, again, I need you guys to understand this. I don't mean generic in the sense where I don't like it. I was having a blast watching this. It kept my interest, especially once Biba came. We found out that he was keeping Kabane, and it's like this really, really cool looking room too. Like the art style, like I said for this, is great. When they tried to make something look good, I thought it was beautiful, man. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. The story of Biba then continues on a little bit when they reach a new station, which Biba kind of wanted to take over, but he was allowed in because they're accepting women and children. He was kind of meeting with the headmasters, and after a little bit of speaking, not really, Biba ends up just straight up killing them. He ends up injecting, and this is where we find out what the vials are from. He ends up injecting one of his friends, workers, I don't really know what to call her, with some serum that turns her into that giant Kabaneri black fog looking thing, but it wasn't typically the same black fog. It was just another big giant beast created by Kabaneri. So the Kabane could listen to the Kabaneri. It's still a little bit confusing on how exactly that works. So she ends up going on a rampage. Kabane end up coming in, storming the place, right? Biba started chaos, and after that, Biba is shown to have no heart in the world, which he didn't really in the first place, because he just, after this girl close to him has served his purpose, he just ends up killing her. After that, honestly, Mume didn't like what she saw there, and she's kind of looking at her big brother like, oh no, like maybe I've been following the wrong guy. Maybe everything that I've been told is a lie, and it's a little bit confusing still what their exact story is. And honestly, it's a little bit confusing what Biba's true mission is, because he's talking like he's this big Kabane killer, but then he's creating giant people to control Kabane. He's trying to take over an entire station. A little bit confusing, but we continue on. We move on to the final few episodes where things really, really tend to take off. So Biba ends up taking control of the train and its passengers, and they end up just collecting their blood. He's staying there and just killing people. Like there was one dude too, and this is where it's really shown that if you weren't sure, Biba's a bad guy, because one guy didn't want his pregnant wife to give blood, and he's like, I'll give 4 times the amount, and Biba's like, oh, okay, and just stabs him in the head. Like it was absolutely insane. So Biba ends up taking everybody captive. He ends up asking the top girl to make an arrangement to meet his father, who they have a little bit of history with, and in exchange, he will guarantee the safety of her people, which I didn't buy one bit. I guess she did, but at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do really, right? So Ikoma is also end up being locked in a cage too, because Ikoma is the only Kabaneri there, right? Biba then offers Mume, who is not locked in a cage, a chance to join his troops, but when she refuses, they end up taking her and giving her a shot, which seems to be some sort of vaccine, and it's kind of putting her under a mind control like that previous girl was, and Biba is kind of revealed to not care about Mume one little bit, just using her. After that, Ikoma ends up breaking out of the cage after a little bit of a plan, and they end up attacking everybody. They end up attacking Biba. They end up trying to take control of the train back, but Mume is now under the influence of this new, I don't know what to call it, like this new drug that Biba ended up coming with, and Mume ends up attacking Ikoma, ends up stabbing him, forcing him off the train, and I was kind of thinking the same thing that ends up getting revealed in the next episode, where I didn't think that Mume was actually fully in control. She was kind of fighting it. She was kind of fighting the orders, and she couldn't really. She was having most of her body controlled, so Mume, the great fighter that she is, missed Ikoma's heart on purpose, stabbed him where he would survive, forced him off the train, keeping him free. In almost the final episode, we're brought to Ikoma, who is off of the train, abandoned, and I don't know how 2 other people got there, but there was a scientist and the sword guy who were there with him. He's having his big depression moment where he's like, oh my god, I'm just gonna sit here and die. I'm gonna turn into a Kabane, wah, wah, wah. In the meantime, though, Biba ends up reaching his father. He ends up kind of having I think it was a tainted sword that he used. He ended up tricking the Shogun into being a Kabane, and then that just caused panic everywhere, because the entire people in that town ended up like, oh my god, this guy was always a Kabane, and Biba kind of just sits on the throne like this really, really bad guy looking style, causing chaos over the place. Kabane are raging everywhere. People are biting each other. Nobody trusts each other. Everybody's shooting each other. But then we're brought back to where Ikoma is, and the scientist has 2 shots. One of them can heal from the entire Kabane curse, and the other one can accelerate the disease and kind of just give you super powers. And so what Ikuma's goal is, because it's been revealed that Mume has been given another shot to go on a rampage just like that first black fog that they were there, Biba was going to use her for something, probably terrorize the place, and then end up killing Mume in the process. But regardless, she was going to lose herself anyway. She was going to become a Kabane, and Biba was probably going to kill her. We don't really know, but it's been revealed that Biba really doesn't care about her. She's being controlled. She's going on a rampage. So Ikuma takes it upon himself to shorten his life, get superhuman powers. He wants to make it to Mume to give her the vaccine and end up being totally okay, healing her, making her human again. He wants everything to be okay. He wants to fulfill his promise that he made to her, because he is just that driven. He's that good of a guy. He is your big hero of the story. And what I thought this would do, and I'll expand on this a little bit, I thought that this was going to make Mume human, period, not just undo what Biba did to her. I thought that she wasn't going to have a place in the second season, but then again, we don't really have a second season to go off of. After a big, strange challenge of Ikuma making his way over to Mume, making his way into the town, fighting off Kabaneri, kind of just losing himself, the samurai guy asks him, like, hey, what are you? And he's like, I'm a Kabaneri, but he's clearly losing his vision. He's getting powerful, but he's still losing himself to being a Kabane. He ends up reaching Mume, who is completely disconnected from reality, recalling different memories from the past and imagining herself surrounded by butterflies. And again, this is where I want to take a stop and just really gush over the art style of this, because that reality that Mume was in, it was beautiful. The butterflies flying around, the fog that was around her kind of being in her own little reality there. It was just really cool. Before Ikuma ends up getting to Mume, though, Biba ends up showing up, and he reveals himself to also be a Kabaneri, which would make total sense. But I actually didn't know if I was expecting that. I don't know. I don't really remember, to be honest with you. It didn't really cross my mind. It just kind of crossed my mind that he was pretty much a bad guy. So they end up having this crazy battle, which is really cool. Biba stabs Ikuma, and Ikuma ends up managing to blast him with the bolt gun, and I thought that was going to be the end of Biba, but Mume ends up sensing the presence of Ikuma around her, and again, it's kind of demonstrated by this different reality that she's in, which is just stunning. Absolutely stunning. I wish I could put it on screen without getting copyrighted here, but hey, that's what these videos have to be about, right? She allows him to inject her with the serum, destroying the new... Oh, that's what it's called, the new. Anyways, destroying the new and returning her to her original form, which I thought, again, the serum was going to just get rid of the Kabane disease in general. I thought she was going to become human again, but I guess not. But anyways, everybody ends up leaving and getting ready to board the train. But this is where it gets really confusing to me, because Biba, in his death, ends up giving another serum to Ikuma, which is putting him back into his regular Kabaneri form. And that I'm super confused about, because Biba was kind of all about, like, oh, the weak he's all about natural selection, right? Doesn't care about the weak. He wants the strong to survive, and that's how they're going to beat the Kabane. That's kind of how his ideology was formed, but I don't understand why after all of that, it seemed like he hated Ikuma, but maybe he didn't. I don't know. That's where it's really confusing. If anybody watching this video could expand on that, I would appreciate that down below, because I don't get it. But other than that, Mume ends up just giving Ikuma's green stone back to him, which he ended up falling out. And I don't think I mentioned that. It was something that he held dear to him the entire time, ended up dropping, and everybody's okay. They end up boarding the train. The series comes to a close, or the season comes to a close, with them ready to face whatever's next with the Kabane. The Kabaneri are here. They took out Biba. They are going to try to save humanity. Ikuma still wants to return Mume into her original form. And so if you could hear that, my baby is still sneezing in her sleep. This is probably a good sign to close the video. She's starting to wake up. But I thought it was a really cool... I thought it was a cool series in general. The ending was just a little bit confusing to me, how Big Brother was... I don't know. Was he a good guy all along? Did he just want to defeat the Kabane, or was he just a bad guy? Was he collecting Kabane to figure out a cure for it? Again, I don't know. But then again, he kind of had a cure, but that was only a cure to what he created, which is the super black fog type thing. I don't know, man. Very confusing, but it's a very cool series, and I'm sad that so far there's been no announcement of season 2, and as far as I know, I have it up on my screen right now, 2016 is when it came out, so I doubt in 2024 we're going to end up getting a second season, but I would love to know what you guys think down below about this series. I'm sad that it's not continuing, and I'm going to wonder how this is going to end. In hopes that something like this ends up getting a second season, I refuse to read the manga book. So please, if you know how it concludes, please don't let me know down below. I don't want this spoiled for me, even if we don't end up getting a second season. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you are interested, check out this video on Attack on Titan on screen right now. I will see you either there or in the next one, guys. Take care.